A devoted husband, a loving father, dead in his bed. What seemed like a tragic natural death was actually cold-blooded murder. But who would want him dead? And how did a simple glass of orange juice turn into a death sentence? This is a shocking case of Sam Abraham, a story of love, betrayal, and cyanide poison that rocked Australia. Welcome back to Dark True Crime Story Thriller. Today, we're diving into a case so chilling, so deceptive. It sounds like a plot straight out of a crime novel. A man poisoned in his own home, a grieving wife who wasn't what she seemed, and a lover waiting in the shadows. This is a disturbing story of Sam Abraham, how a marriage built on trust turned into a deadly trap. Stay with me as we uncover one of the most shocking true crime cases in history. And before we dive in, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into the darkest true crime stories. Now, let's get started. Sam Abraham was the kind of man everyone admired. He was hardworking, responsible, and deeply devoted to his family. He had moved from India to Australia with dreams of building a better future. He wanted his wife, Sophia Sam, and their young son to have a good life, free from struggles. To those who knew him, Sam was full of life. He worked hard at his job, made friends easily, and always greeted people with a warm smile. He was the type of man who would help a stranger without expecting anything in return. His love for Sophia was strong. He did everything for her. He worked extra hours, surprised her with gifts, and even handled most of the responsibilities at home. But what Sam didn't know was that the woman he loved had changed. Sophia no longer saw him as the man of her dreams. The love she once had for him had faded into something cold. She wanted more excitement, more freedom, more passion. And she had found that in someone else. That someone was Johnson Varghese. Johnson was a close family friend. He had been in their lives for years, attending their gatherings, sitting at their dinner table, sharing laughs and conversations with Sam. But behind Sam's back, Johnson and Sophia were hiding a terrible secret. They were in love. At first, it was just flirtation, a lingering touch, a glance held for too long, then secret meetings. Messages sent in the middle of the night. Sweet words exchanged when Sam wasn't looking. Soon, their love grew into something dangerous. They wanted to be together. But there was one problem. Sam. As long as he was alive, they could never be free. They needed to get rid of him. Permanently. Sam had no idea that his wife was planning to destroy him. But there were small things, tiny moments, that should have made him suspicious. Sometimes, when he walked into a room, Sophia would quickly put her phone away. Other times, she would take long phone calls in another room. Her voice hushed, her back turned to him. One night, he caught her stare at her phone with a small smile, completely lost in thought. "Who are you talking to?" he asked playfully. Sophia looked up, startled. She hesitated for a second before shaking her head. "No one," she said quickly, turning off the screen. Sam frowned. A strange feeling crept into his heart, but he pushed it away. He trusted his wife. He loved her, and love makes people blind. He didn't know that while he was working late nights to provide for his family, Sophia and Johnson were whispering to each other about how to end his life. Sophia and Johnson knew they couldn't just attack Sam. That would be too obvious. They needed a plan, a way to kill him without raising suspicion. They thought about many methods, but nothing seemed safe enough. Then, one day, Johnson had an idea. Poison. Cyanide. A deadly chemical that could kill someone within minutes. Just a small dose would be enough. It wouldn't leave any visible marks. No struggle. No signs of an attack. It would look just like a sudden heart attack. It was a perfect murder. Sophia hesitated at first. Could she really do this? Could she really kill the father of her child? But Johnson's voice was soft, persuasive. "This is the only way, Sophia. We can finally be together. No more secrets. No more lies." Her heart pounded. She thought about the life she wanted, the life she deserved. Slowly, she nodded. She would do it. She would kill her husband. Sophia started acting even colder toward Sam. She barely spoke to him. She avoided his touch. At night, she would turn away from him in bed, pretending to be asleep. Sam noticed. One evening, After dinner, he looked at her with sad eyes. "Sophia, is something wrong? You've been distant lately." She forced a smile. "No, I'm just tired." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. His heart ached, but he didn't push her. He thought maybe she was just stressed. Maybe she needed time. He didn't know that time was running out for him. The cyanide had already been bought. The plan was set. And soon, Sam Abraham would take his last breath. As the days passed, Sophia and Johnson became more anxious. Every time Sam laughed, every time he hugged their son, guilt gnawed at Sophia, but she told herself it was for the best. Then the night arrived, the night Sam Abraham would die. It was a regular evening. Sam came home from work, tired but happy. Sophia greeted him like normal, even managing a small smile. She had to act natural. Tonight, there could be no mistakes. After dinner, she walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of orange juice. But before handing it to him, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small packet. Inside was a poison. Her hands shook as she poured it into the juice. It dissolved instantly. No smell, no taste, nothing that would warn Sam of the danger. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and carried the glass to him. "Here," she said, her voice smooth. "I made your favorite." Sam smiled, grateful. He took the glass from her and raised it to his lips. This was it, the moment of no return. Sophia held her breath as she watched him drink. He swallowed. Then he looked at her. He smiled. And then everything changed. The night was quiet. The house was peaceful. Sam Abraham sat on the couch, sipping his orange juice, completely unaware that death was already inside him. At first, everything seemed normal. He set the empty glass on the table and leaned back with a sigh. Sophia watched him closely, her hands gripping the edge of her dress. Johnson had told her it would take just a few minutes for the poison to work. All she had to do was wait. She forced a smile. "Feeling better?" Sam nodded. "Yeah, it was really good. Thanks, Sophia." Her stomach twisted. She had just poisoned her husband, and he was thanking her. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Sam sat still, staring at the TV. He didn't notice anything strange. Sophia's heart pounded. Why wasn't it working? Had she put too little? Did she mess it up? Her hands were getting sweaty. Then suddenly, Sam gasped. His body jerked forward. His hands flew to his stomach. His face twisted in pain. "Sophia," he whispered. His voice was weak, confused. I don't feel good." Then his breathing changed. It became heavy, labored. He clutched his throat. His eyes darted around in panic. Something was wrong. Very wrong. His body started shaking. The pain hit him like a knife. His stomach twisted into knots, and a burning fire spread through his chest. He tried to stand up, but his legs felt weak. The room spun around him. What was happening? His heart pounded violently against his ribs. His hands and feet went numb. His skin turned pale. "Sophia," he choked. "Help me?" Sophia just stood there. She should have rushed to his side. She should have screamed for help. She should have at least pretended to panic. But she didn't. She watched. Sam fell to his knees. His breathing turned into horrible gasps. His body was shutting down. His eyes locked onto Sophia's. Confused. Desperate. Begging. His lips trembled. "Please. Something's wrong. Call an ambulance." But Sophia did nothing, because she already knew no ambulance could save him now. Sam's body convulsed. A sharp, painful spasm shot through him. He collapsed on the floor, his fingers twitching. He was fighting to stay alive, but his body was losing the battle. Tears welled up in his eyes, not just from pain, but from betrayal. His wife, the woman he loved, the mother of his child, was just standing there. He couldn't understand. Why wasn't she helping him? Dark spots clouded his vision. His ears buzzed. His heart slowed down. With the last bit of strength in his body, he tried to speak. His voice was barely a whisper. "Sophia, why?" And then he stopped moving. His body went still. The house fell silent. Sam Abraham was dead. For a few seconds, Sophia didn't move. She stared at her husband's lifeless body, her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. It was done. The man she had spent years with, the man who loved her, the man who had trusted her, gone. She took a shaky breath. Her hands were trembling. Was it guilt or fear? She knew she had to act fast. She had to make it look real. She forced her face to twist into fake panic. She sucked in air, ready to scream. And then she let out a wail. "Oh my God! Sam, wake up!" She dropped to her knees beside him, shaking his shoulders. "Sam, please, someone help." She screamed louder. She cried harder. Their son woke up in the other room, startled by the noise. Neighbors heard the commotion and rushed to check. They found Sophia sobbing, shaking, wailing in grief. The perfect performance. One of them called an ambulance. "Stay strong, Sophia," they told her. "The doctors will help him." But she already knew Sam Abraham was never waking up again. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics rushed into the house, finding Sam motionless on the floor. His skin was pale, his lips slightly blue. His eyes, once full of life, were open but empty. One of the paramedics knelt beside him and checked for a pulse. Nothing. He pressed his fingers against Sam's cold skin. Then he looked up at his partner and shook his head. "He's gone." A painful wail tore through the room. It was Sophia. She fell to ground, shaking her head violently. No, please, check again," she screamed, her voice breaking. The paramedics felt bad for her. It wasn't easy delivering bad news to a wife who had just lost her husband, but something felt off. At the hospital, doctors examined Sam's body. At first, they thought it was a natural death, maybe a heart attack, a stroke, but as they checked his symptoms, things didn't add up. Sam was a healthy man. No heart disease, no history of sudden illness. Yet, he had foam in his mouth. His fingernails were turning dark. One doctor frowned. He had seen cases like this before. Poison. The moment the word crossed his mind, his heart raced. Had this man been murdered? While doctors worked, Sophia continued her performance. She cried loudly in front of the hospital staff. She clung to her relatives, sobbing into their shoulders. She spoke of how much she loved Sam. She played her role perfectly. Most people believed her, but not everyone. Some family members whispered among themselves. Something didn't feel right. Sam had been fine earlier that day. He wasn't sick. How did he just drop dead? And then there was another problem. Sophia's grief seemed too forced, too dramatic, almost like an actress trying too hard. And when people asked her what happened before he died, she kept repeating the same thing. "I don't know, he just collapsed. I don't know, he just collapsed." The doctors decided to run a toxicology test. It was just a hunch, but they had to be sure. They tested Sam's stomach contents, blood, and organs. Days later, the results came back, and what they found changed everything. Cyanide, a deadly poison. The same poison used in murders and suicides around the world. And the levels in Sam's body? Extremely high. This was an accident. This was cold-blooded murder. The moment cyanide was confirmed, the hospital called the police. Within hours, detectives were digging into the case. They started with the most obvious question. Who would want Sam Abraham dead? The answer was right in front of them, his wife. But they needed proof. Detectives sat Sophia down for questioning. She sobbed through the entire interview, pretending to be too heartbroken to think straight. "I don't know what happened," she kept saying. But the detectives weren't fooled. They noticed small cracks in her story. For one, she never mentioned what Sam ate or drank before his death. A wife should remember his last meal, especially if she was the one who gave it to him. But she avoided talking about it. That was strange. Then, they asked where she was when Sam collapsed. Her answer? In the other room. That didn't make sense. Sam had called out to her for help. He had begged for an ambulance. But she had done nothing until he was already dead. That wasn't normal. That was suspicious. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered something shocking. Sophia had a boyfriend. His name was Johnson Varghese, a man who had been close to the family. a man who had secretly been in love with Sophia. When the police found this out, everything clicked. Sophia wasn't grieving Sam's death. She was celebrating her freedom. She and Johnson had planned this together. Detectives knew Sophia and Johnson had killed Sam, but knowing wasn't enough. They needed evidence. They needed something that would trap them, and soon they would find it. Because Sophia and Johnson had made one fatal mistake. They thought they had gotten away with murder, but the truth was about to catch up to them, and justice was coming. The detectives knew Sophia and Johnson had killed Sam, but they needed proof strong enough to put them behind bars. So they set a trap. They started by digging into Sophia's life. They checked her phone calls, her text messages, and her bank records. And soon they found something shocking. Just days before Sam's death, Sophia had searched online for cyanide. Not just that, she had also looked up how fast does cyanide kill, and best way to poison someone without getting caught. It was clear Sam's death was an accident. It was premeditated murder. But detectives needed more. They needed someone who knew the truth, and that's when they found him, a chemist who worked at a local shop. He remembered Sophia and Johnson. Just weeks before Sam's murder, they had come to his shop. They had asked strange questions about cyanide. The chemist had refused to sell them anything, but he had remembered them, their faces, their nervous whispers. That was all detectives needed. They were getting closer, and soon the final piece of evidence would appear. Detectives placed a secret wiretap on Johnson's phone. If he and Sophia had planned the murder, they had likely talked about it. They needed to catch them in their own words. And then, it happened. One night, Johnson called Sophia. He sounded nervous. The police are asking too many questions. Sophia whispered, "Don't panic. They have no proof." Then came the biggest mistake of all. Johnson sighed. "I should have just thrown that cyanide bottle away." Silence. Then Sophia hissed, "Shut up, Johnson. Do you want us to get caught?" The detectives listening to the call froze. This was it. The killers had just incriminated themselves. Now, it was time to take them down. The next morning, police knocked on Sophia's door. She answered, wearing fake grief on her face. But when she saw the detectives' cold, hard stares, she knew. They knew the truth before she could react. "Sophia Abraham, you're under arrest for the murder of Sam Abraham." Her body stiffened. "W what?" "No, you have it all wrong," she screamed. But the detectives didn't listen. They grabbed her wrists, slapped cold handcuffs onto her trembling hands. At the same time, another team arrested Johnson. He tried to run, but he didn't get far. Within minutes, both Sophia and Johnson were in custody, and soon they would face the consequences of their crime. Sophia sat in the interrogation room. Her hands shook. Her eyes darted around. She could feel the walls closing in. Across from her, a detective leaned forward. "We know what you did, Sophia. We have the proof." She shook her head. No, you don't." The detective smirked. Then he pressed play on a recording device. Her own voice filled the room. "Shut up, Johnson. Do you want us to get caught?" Sophia's blood ran cold. She realized there was no escape. The trap had closed. Justice was coming. Sophia sat in the cold courtroom, her hands gripping the wooden bench. The room was packed. Reporters, family, friends, neighbors. All of them had come to watch the trial of the woman who killed her husband. At the front of the courtroom, the prosecutor stood up. He turned to the jury and spoke in a calm, confident voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this was not a tragic accident. This was murder." He pointed straight at Sophia. She poisoned her husband in cold blood, and she thought she could get away with it. Sophia's face twisted. She felt everyone's eyes burning into her. She wanted to scream, to say she was innocent, but she knew it would be a lie, and the truth was finally catching up to her. One by one, witnesses took the stand. First, the toxicologist explained how cyanide had killed Sam Abraham. There is no doubt this was deliberate poisoning. Then the chemist testified. "I remember her and Johnson asking about cyanide." Next, the detective played the phone recording. Sophia's own voice echoed through the courtroom. "Shut up, Johnson. Do you want us to get caught? Gasps filled the room. Sophia felt her stomach drop. There was no way out. The evidence was overwhelming. Then came the biggest shock of all. Johnson took the stand, but instead of defending Sophia, he turned against her. It was her idea, he said, his voice shaking. Sophia's eyes widened. What? She whispered. Johnson refused to look at her. She wanted Sam dead. She convinced me to help. I was stupid. I should have stopped it. Sophia's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to scream. How dare he betray her? They had planned this together. But now, he was throwing her under the bus. The courtroom was silent. Everyone watched as Sophia's face turned red with rage. She had spent years controlling Johnson, manipulating him, making him do what she wanted. But now he had turned on her, and she had no one left on her side. The jury left to decide her fate. Sophia sat still, her breath shallow. She could feel it. Her life was over. When the jury returned, the courtroom fell silent. The judge looked down at Sophia. His voice was firm, cold, merciless. Sophia Abraham, please stand. Her legs trembled as she rose. The judge turned to the jury. Have you reached a verdict? A juror nodded. Yes, Your Honor. We find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. Some people cheered. Some cried. Sophia? She collapsed back into her chair, shaking her head. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to win. She was supposed to be free. But instead, she was going to prison. Forever. The judge's voice was calm but firm. For the murder of Sam Abraham, I sentence you to life in prison. Sophia's mouth fell open. She wanted to beg, to scream, to plead for mercy. But deep down she knew she deserved this. She had destroyed a life. Now, her own life was destroyed, too. As the guards led her away, she took one last look at the courtroom, at Sam's family, at the people who once cared for her. Now, all she saw was hatred. And then, the doors closed behind her. Sophia Abraham was gone, and justice was finally served. Sam Abraham's family mourned him for years. His son grew up without a father, but he never forgot what happened, and he never forgave the mother who stole his father's life. As for Johnson, he was sentenced to prison too, but he'd save himself from life in jail by betraying Sophia. He thought he had won, but in the end, he lost everything, just like Sophia, and just like Sam, because in the world of crime, no one truly wins. And that, my friends, is a chilling true story of Sam Abraham's murder, a case of betrayal, greed, and justice finally served. But now I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think justice was served? What shocked you the most about this case? Do you believe Johnson deserved a lesser sentence for turning against Sophia? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear your opinions on this twisted case. If you found this story as shocking as I did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more dark and gripping true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, the truth always comes out. See you in the next one.